Yo, Pierre, you wanna come out here?
Zuzi on the track.
Boy Cartier Ketchup. Last name Ketchup. Do you smell what Cartier is cooking? Do you? Matter of fact, let's do it. I'm just playing. Now today we got some new hot off the press. Y'all have been anticipating. Y'all have been asking me again and again and again. But we are back with our boy, Michael Francesz or Francese. Yeah, the mafia legend himself. And in this little episode here, he's doing a sit down with a former KGB secret agent. Now, for y'all that don't know what that is, let me put it in layman terms. A Russian spy. This is going to be a good one. So if you're new, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. And join the ride.
How many spies do you think we have within the United States now? And is
Hold on. We're going to just start off the video like that. We're going to just ask Buddy how many spies are in America. He's not going to answer.
Is it easier because of high tech and the internet and social media? Is it easier to gain information for the enemy, so to speak? Is it easier to change the ideology, that we have here? Because, my thinking is this. Every great nation that we know of, at least in my learning of history, it's always been conquered first from within. It's weakened from within. Yep. And then it becomes viable for a conquest. Do you see that happening now? I mean...
All right, so this is multiple questions. Let me just answer the question with how many spies we have in the United States.
So hold on. this man's really finna answer this. He's really finna answer that. Do he get persecuted? Do Russia, I don't know what Russia does. I know y'all crazy. You see my eyes looking at y'all? Some of y'all are from beyond the reach. Y'all crazy. But for him to put this out... Might as well go ahead and get some popcorn. Get your popcorn ready. It's finna be a long journey. That's how I know I haven't heard this one. With Jack Barsky.
Jack Philip Barsky, born Albert Dietrich, I think I have that right, 13th of November 1949, is a German-American author, IT specialist, and former sleeper agent of the KGB who spied on the United States from 1978 to 1988. Exposed after the Cold War, Barsky became a resource for U.S. counterintelligence agencies and was allowed to remain in the United States. His autobiography, Deep Undercover, was published in 2017, and he frequently speaks on his experiences and as an expert on espionage. Jack, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this moment for quite some time. Are you actually back in the U.S.?
Yeah, I'm here now in Southern California. That's where I live.
Nice place to be. Actually, I'm going to be in Southern California in August, speaking at a church in Cyprus.
In Cyprus, wow. Okay, it's possible I've been to that church. I've been to so many out here, but what's the date in August, Jack?
I have to email you that. It's the middle of August, and you're certainly invited to attend this. I'm going to give my testimony, which is not as much out in public because none of the big secular hosts want to talk about it.
Really?
Yeah, I offered the picture of my baptism to 60 Minutes, and they politely declined.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm not
60 minutes. So y'all don't like. Hold on. Before I get mad, before I raise up off this chair and, say something crazy. 60 minutes. So y'all don't like people that get baptized and become a Christian? Let me note something, 60 minutes. Because I'll never watch y'all again. Ever. There's no reason to watch no 60 minutes. Who do y'all have that's important? Huh? Let me know something. 60 minutes of my time wasted. Heck is wrong with y'all? Y'all don't like people that are born again into the calling of Christ? Are y'all? I digress.
surprised about that. But, unfortunately, I'm going to be in the United Kingdom. I'm doing a 25-city tour beginning July 2nd. So I'll be there until the end of August. So I'll miss you that time. But where do you, well, maybe we'll catch up,
All right, no problem.
But anyway, let's get into this. One of the reasons I'm fascinated in my former life, Cosa
I am
Nostra
too.
Mafia, we were always concerned about spies, which we called informants, but spies and informants kind of interchangeable. And we were kind of always on the lookout for them, in different ways. We were careful who we spoke to. We would, if we just met somebody, we had to put them through a process to know that they could be trusted and we could bring them around. So it was always, it was fascinating to me. And, we had two kinds of informants. Number one, we had undercover FBI agents like Joe Pistone, who was
And I'm sorry for interrupting. 6ix9ine. Deeply undercover FBI agent. Boy was a rapper, rainbow hair. Turns out he's a rat. He's a rat. A whole snitching rat. You seen what he did to Roger? He gave that boy 40 years. He gave his whole gang 40 years. There's no more New York. Man. New York, y'all gonna have to take the L on that one. That's a big L y'all gonna have to take. He was calling himself the king of New York. So he the king of rats. That's tough. And y'all like Chinese food too? Oh man, that's tough. New York, y'all gonna have to take the L on that.
brilliantly for 6 years. He remained undercover.
Ain't he from
Shame
Brooklyn?
on us,
Oh
but
my God.
that happened. And then we have defectors kind of from within, like a Greg Scarper or Willie Boy Johnson, that were actually part of the life, but were also informing to the government for years and years and years, undetected. We didn't know it. So I'm familiar with spying or informants in that regard, and was always leery of them. But your story is fascinating. Tell us how this all began with you. I mean, I know you were born in East Germany. How did it begin?
Yeah, well, I was born into 4 years after the end of World War II, and I was born into the poorest section of all of Germany. It was Soviet occupied, but at that corner where I grew up was like as poor as it got. There was really nothing happening there, but I managed to get out of there because the Lord gave me a halfway decent brain. I did well in school, and I did very well in high school. I graduated with all A's. I had a choice of college and studied chemistry, and I did really well there as well. I graduated as valedictorian, and I also got a national scholarship that was limited to 100 concurrent recipients at the time. So that was a big one. And based on that track record, and you grow up under communist brainwashing, you have no choice. You become a communist yourself. The idea of this wonderful paradise on earth where everybody is equal, it's very appealing to young people. And I bought it hook, line, and sinker. So in those days in East Germany, there was a file on everybody, and I believe, and I reconstruct this, that when the KGB was looking for raw material, that people that could become undercover agents, they just went. They were allowed to look through the files, and I was a standout. I mean, and so they knocked on the door. I'm short. I'm not telling the whole story in detail. People can find it in the book. They knocked on the door. When I was asked if I had an interest, I played along because I was curious. I want to see what happens. A year and a half it took for me having an informal relationship with the person who was my handler at that time before they actually made the offer for employment. A year and a half, because they had to figure out whether I fit the mold. It isn't just brains. It isn't just bravery, lack of fear. There's one of the favorite character traits that I found they were looking for is
Catherine Cortez Masto's record in Washington sided with Biden's extremist anti-gun agenda 100% of the time, leaving Nevada families defenseless. We can't afford 6 more years of Joe and Catherine. Defeat Catherine Cortez Masto.
It is okay to be so stressed and overwhelmed that you feel like you need to talk to someone about it. And by that, I mean going to
controlled inclination for adventure. The ability to operate on, make decisions quickly, be by yourself for a long period of time, and on and on and on. And in the year and a half, the fellow that worked with me concluded I had what it takes, and he was right. I was pretty successful with regard to, I operated altogether. I operated for 10 years undetected, and then it took the FBI another 5 years to find me, and they found me only because there was a defector from the KGB archives. So yeah, I fit the description. That doesn't mean that I'm arrogant enough to say I'm a better person than most everybody else. No, I'm just different. And the well-controlled inclination for adventure degraded into recklessness occasionally.
So Jack, very interesting what you said. So you bought in, as a young man, you bought into the communist ideology, hook, line, and sinker. Everybody's equal. It was appealing to you. Is that correct? Because, I really want you to comment on this. As you know, I'm sure you follow our politics and what's going on in this country. We have now these democratic socialists who are the progressives that are trying to spread that ideology throughout the country. And I think it's a lot of young people that are buying into it, this equality deal. Please comment on that, Jack, and how you feel about that. And is it great? Is it dangerous? What do you think?
The comparison between the leaders of the Communist Party in East Germany, where I grew up, and the Democratic Socialists, the Americans will not appear with a lot of praise because they are dreamers and they're idiots. Okay, the communists in
He said, hold on, go back. Oh, he shouldn't have let him answer that question.
Democratic Socialists, the Americans will not appear with a lot of praise because they are dreamers and they're idiots. Okay?
And he said that with all honesty, like, y'all are idiots. Y'all are dreamers. Y'all dream of the day to be equal. Y'all are idiots. Y'all bought a hook, line, and sinker. What can I say? This man is different. This guy right here, he's different. I might get his book.
Communists in East Germany were not idiots. They were smart people. They were focused, and they actually got stuff done. When the wall was erected in 1961, it was a...
Hold on. So is he calling Americans idiots because they're not smart? Like the whole nation? And then he said, well, East Germany, they're smart. They get stuff done. They do it. Did he just diss us in our face? On the low key? Like, I'm trying to figure this out. Buddy said we're idiots. Now, I'm thinking he talking about the Democratic Party until he said something about East Germany.
Incredibly difficult logistical operation to get this done in a day and a half or whatever. The democratic socialists that we have in the United States don't have a clue how to get anything done. And we now have a central government, the federal government, that everything they touch is just like they mess it up.
Yep.
Because they're just like, they live in their own world and have never really succeeded in life. And so now we're burdened with that nonsense.
You know, it's amazing you said that, because I recently wrote a book, Mafia Democracy, and I go into the ideology that I see in our government that's so similar to the way we operated on the street. It's very Machiavellian. And you said something now, I feel the same way. When somebody is in a government, getting a government salary for 45, 46, 47 years, it's like something happens, inside of them. They don't know how to work anymore. In this administration, it feels like, exactly like you said, they just can't get anything done. Nothing seems to be going right. But, this is what we're faced with right now, and hopefully people will get to understand that. People like yourself talk about it, who've experienced that kind of lifestyle and that kind of ideology will prevail.
May I add something which is rather pessimistic? And I'm at heart an optimist. I wouldn't have taken on this job to go into enemy territory and spy there if I wasn't convinced that everything would be okay. Yeah. Okay, so I'm an optimist, but what I'm looking at now in the United States, I think a reversal of where we are going, and we're going in the wrong direction, is very difficult to achieve, and I'm telling you why. It has nothing to do with the current government. It has nothing to do with some of the idiot socialists. It has something to do that now we have at least 2 generations that have been educated and brainwashed to believe things that are not true. We're talking, the school and the universities. How do you fix that? Because I know for a fact that what you are being taught as a young person, it is extremely difficult to overcome. Because there's contemporaries of mine who I've met when I went back to Germany who were just like me, communists, and they still are at heart, even though they had all the opportunity to research, to figure out what happened. It's going to be an uphill battle. I'm serious.
Well, Jack, let me ask you this. You're an expert in espionage. How is it that this ideology has been able to infiltrate our education system over the past, maybe you're right, 1 or 2 decades? How is it possible that they've been able to do that? What kind of movement is going on? What's happening in this country to allow that?
Okay, now, the one thing I am not a proponent of is the idea that somehow this undermining was started by the KGB, by the Soviet Union, and the seeds were seeded. The reason I'm saying saying that is because the KGB didn't have a clue how America functions. I had personal experience because the ones that were trained me gave me nothing but bad advice. They had no clue. They didn't know what it was like to be an American. They didn't know how American society functioned. And vice versa, by the way, the CIA didn't understand the Soviet Union either. So it is my theory, and this is sort of where empires go over time. America has become fat, dumb, and happy, or you can also say, depending upon the mood, fat, dumb, and angry. When you have more to lose than to gain, you become complacent. The edge that America had as a country, the seeking of adventure and the doing better for yourself and doing better for the country, that has disappeared. We're now playing defense. We have too much to lose, And, I've seen this in corporate America. I spent 30 plus years in corporate. And, the higher up they are, the less.
What haven't he done? This man said, I just spent 30 years in corporate America. Like, he was a KGB agent, a sleeper agent, sleeper cell, splinter cell, 30 years of corporate America. Like, what hasn't this man done, bro? What haven't he done? Because I'm trying to figure this out. My brain's starting to hurt.
Willing they are, in many companies, willing they are to make decisions because they could go wrong. And if they go wrong, they lose their job, right? So this is this complacency and the fear. If I go out there on a limb, if I take accountability, it could be wrong and then I lose everything. And I think that's a big one. That's really the big one.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's funny that you say that. I'm involved a bit in the entertainment industry, and when you're trying to get a project done and you bring it into a studio, it's so much easier for them to say no than it is to say yes. Because if they say no, well, it's over at that point, even if somebody else picks it up and has a success with it. But if they say yes and it fails, well, you spent a lot of money, time, effort, and, the onus goes on you. So a lot of times it's a lot easier to say no. So I understand that, very well. And that's interesting. So we have more to lose than we do to gain, is what you're saying.
Yes, and here's the thing, like you don't have to look too far into the situation. The phenomenal fear that was generated by this COVID virus is just unprecedented, where people have done and still do stupid things. Doctor's office, you go to the doctor and you must put a mask on. It doesn't matter that the mask that you're using has been proven to be completely useless, but you still must put a mask on because somebody is afraid that, if they don't implement that particular idiotic measure, they might get fired. It's just totally amazing. Or people, walking in the park with a mask on, driving in a vehicle with a mask on. That's raw fear.
Well, I agree with you, Jack. I see no sense in it either. Even in some restaurants now, they're still wearing masks, long after this issue has been resolved, really. I mean, people are not worried about it, but
I concur, because my mother had COVID after it's been situated. So I still wear my mask. Yeah.
No, I agree with you. But look at how they were able to instill that fear in people that still exists now, even though COVID is basically not a real threat anymore to anyone. But yeah, I agree with that. But let me ask you this.
May I explain something, how this happens?
Yeah, please do.
Because I about a year and a half ago, I wrote an essay called The Age of Unreason. America has forgotten how to think. And it's...
This is Bob. Bob liked posting that he voted in 2020. Bob posts a lot about politics.
Yes, he does.
But we know he let his voter registration get out of date.
Dang.
And it starts again in school. The school system is focusing on learning facts, not learning how to think and to have a discussion, an argument about, seeking the truth. And so when people, for instance, would say during COVID, I follow the science, they didn't have a clue what that means.
Yeah. Because
science is not, this is what we know and it's over. The science has been settled. No, science is always looking for the truth, and man is so far away from finding the truth. So if you cannot, the only thing that can defeat fear is reason, and people don't know how to reason anymore.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great explanation. I really mean that, because some people, I'll ask them, I've been in a restaurant and I'll say, why are you wearing a mask? I can't even understand what you're saying to me. Well, we have to. They don't even want to do it. They don't even know the reason why. We have to. That's the answer. But let me ask you this, Jack. What was it that caused you to accept the invitation to become, a spy? Was it a hate? Because you, grew up under communism and communist ideology, was it a hatred of the U.S. system? Was it intrigue? Was it just, hey, this is adventurous and I want to do it? What was the reason?
It was a mix. The only hatred that I've ever felt in my heart is the hatred for the German Nazis, because we were shown what they did. I was in my junior year. My class was a requirement. We visited a concentration camp, and what we saw there, like, it was just horrendous. Piles of corpses and some shrunken heads. I mean, real shrunken heads, not pictures of shrunken heads.
Really?
And so I so hated that I could not believe how man can do that to man. I didn't hate the United States, but the United States supported West Germany, and in West Germany there were some ex-Nazis in government. That was the ideological foundation. Yeah, I wanted to help defeat the Nazis. And the other thing was clearly the sense of adventure. Definitely, I wanted to travel, and I wanted, and I felt really good about being recruited by the KGB when you're like in your 20s, and this powerful organization says, "We like you, we want you." I say, yes. And I became so full of myself, and it took a long time to get rid of that, focus on self and the thought that I was just like way above everybody else. That it disappeared when I found God, for sure.
Wow. I tell you, Jack, I agree. My study of history, I think that at a point in time we can say the Nazis were the most evil force on planet Earth. The way they conducted themselves. I mean, it was.
But Stalin and the Soviet Union and Mao and communist China weren't that far behind. Stalin killed a lot of his own citizens.
Yeah.
Since we're now at a time when Russia is fighting Ukraine, that Stalin pretty much killed about 4 million Ukrainians by starving them to death, because they resisted the collectivization. So I figured, I'd just kill them all. Horrible scenes there too, but not as well documented.
Really? Wow. Let me ask you this. Do you believe the Russians had anything to do with compromising the 2016 election here in the United States?
This was my first interview ever on cable TV, and I was asked that question with regard to was there some collusion, or did the Russians, did they really want to have Hillary as the president? And I said, I don't think so. What the Russians were doing with a vengeance is trying to make the rift that it already was in society, make it bigger. In that respect, they have done quite well, and it's still ongoing. I have a background in information technology, and I have a lot of folks who are very knowledgeable in cyber war and so forth. There's a lot of estimates that say that about 20% of what you find on Facebook is manufactured, and a lot of that is manufactured by Russians. So this was really the focus, and I think the argument makes sense because the relationship between the Obama government and Russia wasn't that good either. After the reset, it all went down the hill, and there was no indication that Donald Trump would do any better. So I don't think they wanted to have Trump as a president, and if they did, they regretted it, because he actually got pretty tough. Even though he always talked this soft. He said, I love Vladimir Putin. I get along with him. Maybe deep down inside a little bit, because he likes to be the all-powerful individual, but he just sweet talk the dictators. I think that was not the right approach, but the actions of the Trump government spoke louder than Trump's words.
What do you think is driving Putin? I mean, we hear different things. That number one, he's concerned about NATO allies on his border. He wants to bring back the Soviet Union. We hear there's paranoia in him. What do you think is driving him to do what he's done?
Catherine Cortez Masto's record in Washington sided with Biden's extremist anti-gun agenda 100% of the time, leaving the Vatican.
I'm not gonna lie, I love the interview, I love the questions, and I love the answers. He's really getting into the meat and the potatoes of this whole interview section. I'm really appreciating this right now.
We can't afford 6 more years of Joe and Catherine. Defeat Catherine Cortez Masto.
As we teach our students, week after week, they're able to build.
Since, I forgot exactly the year, but it was more than a dozen years ago, Putin has been an open book with regard to what his agenda was going to be. And he went on record. There was a conference in Switzerland where he gave a speech and he said, it is his goal to reestablish a greater Russia, the Russia, and so unite all the Russian-speaking folks and recreate the glory that he thought and they think was once Russia under, say, Peter the Great. It wasn't that glorious, okay? Under Peter the Great, Russia was a state mostly populated by peasants and had mostly agriculture. And Stalin actually forced the industrialization of the Soviet Union. And that didn't go so well either because their industry is still not really capable. It's just there was no organic growth. Anyway, so getting back to the question, Vladimir Putin has, and as part of that overall strategy, is taking little bites when he thinks he can. So he took Crimea. The Obama government didn't even sneeze, okay? And now he thought it would be time to take Ukraine, and that's obviously miscalculation for sure. But you know what? He and his intelligence services and everybody in the West thought it would be a walkover. Yeah, well, they didn't know that Ukrainian people are incredibly proud and have a long memory of what Stalin did to Ukraine. The bottom line is you cannot conquer a country and win a war if you fight the entire population. The United States found that out in Vietnam, and we had a much stronger military than the Russians, and yet women and children fought the U.S. Army. This is a situation now, I think, where neither Ukraine nor Russia is winning because Ukraine is not winning. They're losing a lot of people, that's civilians, and Russia is not making that progress, and they're losing a lot of soldiers. And in that process, they are weakening their own military. And I've been on TV many times, and I get the question. So, what do you see? Where is this going? And I said, I have no idea. It's going to take a long time for something to happen when people stop shooting. And just in case Putin manages to take over a sizable chunk of Ukraine or install a puppet regime, it's not over. It will be then like Afghanistan squared. And the Afghanistan situation was the beginning of the end of the Soviet Union.
Jack, do you think Putin would have invaded Ukraine if Trump was in office?
I believe not, because Donald Trump was unpredictable and he made tough decisions. I think not. I think it was during the election campaign when you heard the person that we call president mumble and stumble through a bunch of speeches or whatever, question and answer. You knew that there was incredible weakness, intellectual as well as, overall courage. He's an empty shell.
Biden is. You know the way the governments work. Do you think Biden is really in control of what's going on here?
Not. And I said, I talked about the incompetence. There are probably, I don't know how many, and we don't know who they are, but some people probably.
He's not the one in control. And that's all I'm going to say. People behind them scenes. Y'all know. Y'all know who them people are.
Good guesses, I don't. But there are a number of competent people in the government that have an agenda, and they're controlling the sock puppet in the White House. But they're not visible. Okay, they don't have positions of power, but they wield that power, I believe, by influencing our president and making him think that he's doing incredibly well, and he might go into history as like a JFK or an FDR, right? Because he's changing the United States to make it better.
Well, you know what? The sad thing about that is after 47 years in government, if he on his own can't see what's happening and that the decisions that he are making are certainly not benefiting this country, then something is incredibly wrong there. Let me ask you this. We all have this paranoia now, not paranoia, but we all have this concern because we keep hearing that, Putin is a wild card also. And if he really thinks he's losing ground, he wouldn't hesitate to use a nuclear weapon. What do you feel about that?
And that is when this war started. That was the first thing I was talking about. There is concern about that, but it's not necessarily Putin purposely doing this. You know, there's Putin rhetoric, and we know he talks like a tough guy. And then we have politicians in the United States, you know, the armchair warriors who, our president called Putin a war criminal. Did that move the needle someplace? No, that's a political statement. You know, he wanted to see, to appear tough. There are some Republicans who do it too. It's the politicians. And every time, this is one of my favorite things to say, every time politics dominates foreign policy, I'm going to make wrong decisions. And here's why I'm talking about this is dangerous. The rhetoric escalates the tension. And with higher tension, there's a better chance of mistakes being made. Even mistakes in thinking, or, when it's really tense, you might just make a damn mistake and explode one of those bombs. And now what?
Yeah.
This is a very, very dangerous times that we live in right now.
Would you say, in your experience, are these the most dangerous of times that you've experienced during your lifetime, at least with respect to the United States?
Somewhat comparable to the situation when the Berlin Wall was erected. And I know the history of this, and there was a good chance of actually Soviet troops and American troops actually engaging. And there were some situations where they were actually standing next to or opposing each other in tanks here and tanks there. So that was dangerous. There were also, the Cuban Missile Crisis was probably the worst.
Yeah.
And in that time frame, there was a nuclear submarine that was outside of Cuba. Okay, so this is what happened. The Americans saw that there was a submarine, and they released a depth charge, which required the submarine to appear. And so they actually had the ability to decide as to whether to shoot a nuclear missile onto the U.S. mainland. And the top guy said, no, we're not going to do it. So similar, mistakes. Yeah. So I think there were, as I said, 2-3 situations during the Cold War when we were in similar danger.
Let me ask you this. First question. Do you think there is a real alliance between Russia and China right now, and that they have a common goal of somehow overcoming, I don't know if I'm using the right word, defeating, overcoming, taking over principal power here in the world from the United States?
This is a marriage of convenience. Anything to weaken NATO and the United States, that makes them allies. But let's just, for argument's sake, imagine that NATO just becomes meaningless and the Western world loses its capability to lead the planet. At that point, the two players will oppose each other because they have different goals. And the Chinese are much bigger and stronger. I mean, Russia is a nothing economically. And the only reason that they are able to buy stuff that they can't produce themselves is because of they have natural resources. But their economy is number 11 or 12 in the world. And it's weaker than Italy. So the only reason that you have to worry about them is that they have the nukes. And they share a pretty long common border. And there have been skirmishes along that border for many, many years. So they don't really like each other, but they hate the United States, and they want to make the world into a Eastern-dominated type planet, where the East dominates and the West is kaput.
Well, it's a marriage of convenience unless it becomes inconvenient, basically.
That's exactly right. Yes, I believe so.
Let me ask you this again, Jack, because I think people are interested in this. I would assume to a great degree, Russia's nuclear capability. If, God forbid, there ever was that mistake, that accident, something happened, who do you think would prevail? I mean, obviously, there's a loser on both sides because nuclear war is devastating, but who do you think would prevail? Would anybody prevail? What would the outcome be?
I don't think you can win a nuclear war, even though I got to be really careful. This is all hearsay, and what I heard other people talk about. Even though the United States has better defensive weapons, and that's thanks to Ronald Reagan and Star Wars. Okay, so we have the ability to actually do damage from satellites, and I believe the Russians don't have that. But ultimately, it's like Ukraine. Nobody can win there. A nuclear war you can't win because there will be destruction everywhere. That's sort of, the situation. You ever saw the movie Mad Max?
Yes.
That's what I see the world might become if we are firing nukes at each other.
Well, you would hope that even a Putin, who, is basically a mad hatter, sometimes out of control, would at least think of that and say, there's no winner here. What am I doing, But who knows? It's something that we have to live with now.
Well,
We're Carvana, the company
Man.
who invented car vending machines and buying a car 100% online. Now we...
well, I think
This is getting crazy. Let's keep going.
there's something to be said here. As aggressive the Soviet leadership was, the Soviet Union, none of them wanted to die. They're not suicidal. I don't think Vladimir Putin is suicidal. If his mental health deteriorates to a point where he doesn't care anymore, he doesn't know what he's doing anymore, one would hope that there are some procedures, some rules in place that would allow other people who are high up in the military, whatever, in government, who don't want to die to override the suicidal guy. It's not like, for instance, Iran, where they all want to die. They think that's the end goal for them, and so you get to heaven and you get to sleep with 30 virgins and all that. Russia isn't wired that way. Okay, so there's some hope.
Wow. Well, that's good to hear. That even if he does lose his mind a little bit, there'll be people around him that'll control it, and there's...
Yeah, well, as I said, they don't want to die. There is no desire to sacrifice yourself for a greater cause. So in that respect, thank God, the Russians are still rational human beings.
Let me ask you this, Jack. From your experience, how many spies do you think we have within the United States now? And is it...
Here we are. Yes.
Is it easier because of high tech and the internet and social media? Is it easier to gain information for the enemy, so to speak? Is it easier to change the ideology, that we have here? Because, my thinking is this: every great nation that we know of, at least in my, learning of history, it's always been conquered first from within. It's weakened from within. Yep. And then it becomes viable for a conquest. Do you see that happening now? I mean...
All right, so this is multiple questions. Let me just answer the question with how many spies we have in the United States. I'm going to tell you a lot, okay? But
This man said a lot, bro. He said a lot. This man said a lot. A lot of spies. A lot. What is we doing? This man said a lot. A lot. Oh my God. I have to hear that one more time. Oh my Jesus Christ, Son of the living. Oh.
Human beings.
Let me ask you this, Jack. From your experience, how many spies do you think we have within the United States now?
A lot.
And is it easier because of high tech and the internet and social
Hold
media?
on, before I let the answer play again. That means you can't trust no one. Your next door neighbor could be a Russian spy. Hell, the mail carrier could be a Russian spy. This man said a lot. Man, I'm gonna let it play.
Is it easier to gain information for the enemy, so to speak? Is it easier to change the ideology, that we have here? Because, my thinking is this: every great nation that we know of, at least in my, learning of history, it's always been conquered first from within. It's weakened from within. Yep. And then it becomes viable for a conquest. Do you see that happening now? I mean...
All right, so this is multiple questions. Let me just answer the question with how many spies we have in the United States. I'm going to tell you a lot, okay? But not people like me, simply because we were extremely difficult and expensive to train and to maintain. Like Russia doesn't need illegals as much as the Soviet Union thought they needed illegals, because in those days, in my days, there was almost no real openness between the United States and the Soviet Union. There was very little, there were very few people from the Soviet Union coming to the United States officially as students, as business people, as scientists and so forth. Now this is it's very fluid. You got lots of Russians in the United States and even a lot more Chinese. And both countries pretty much control who is allowed to go to Western countries. So when they leave, they'll be asked, can you help out the motherland? And enough of them say yes. And they're not well trained. When you see the ones that have been caught lately, like particularly this young lady, I think Maria Butina, I don't know if that was the right first name, but she had absolutely no training, because she communicated with Moscow through social media. She had not even the basic training. So, and that sort of is something that Vladimir Putin doesn't mind. He doesn't mind if some of his agents are caught, because that raises then the question, how many more are there? Wow. And, just the intimidation factor. Compared to the Soviet Union, the KGB really was very, very protective of their agents. They panicked when they thought, I was about to be caught, which wasn't true. They proactively said, come on home. We don't want you to be caught. So that was part of the question. The other part is, yes, has become a lot easier to steal secrets in the day and age of the internet.
That's why cybersecurity is so important today. That's why there's millions of jobs through cybersecurity that is opening up now till 2026, 27. Wait. Or 2028. It's one of those 3 years that there are millions of job openings for cybersecurity. This video right here was tough. That's a lot of information. But that's the end of the video. I know there's a part. If y'all want me to do a part 2, just comment down below, do the part 2, finish it, or y'all know. That was a lot of information, and for him to say that there's a lot of Russian spies on American soil, that's crazy. I don't even know what to say after hearing that. But I thank y'all for tuning in. I pray each and every one of y'all be blessed. I pray that y'all go after your goals. Make a vision board. I made one today. Put all the visions that I have into plain text, so I could keep looking at it over and over and over again, to make sure that I'm putting myself on the right path to get to my goals. So with that being said, and one more thing, please look into cybersecurity. There's millions of jobs. There's schools out there, boot camps for cybersecurity. If you don't want to go the degree route, which I'm not going the degree route because it's too long, I'm going the cybersecurity boot camp route. But if you need information on cybersecurity, hit me up down below. Or heck, type in, please give me more information on cybersecurity, and I'll give y'all the information on that. But with that being said, I love y'all. I pray y'all have a beautiful, blessed day. And like I always say, I pray for your success like you pray for mine. And I'm out.